Welcome back, guys. This week we're going to be looking at crouching, and crouching is one of those things where it can be pretty simple to do, or it can be kind of complicated depending on what you want to achieve. What we are looking to do with our crouching is something that's pretty common in a lot of FPS games, which is the jump crouch. So you'll see this here. This is 2 meters. These blocks are a meter tall, and the character can't actually get up on it. And so what we'll do, we've got a crouch here, as you can see. We can jump and then crouch. Now, there's a little bit of complexity when trying to combine a crouch that you do on the ground and a jump crouch. So you'll notice that the camera doesn't move when I jump, and that essentially just means that we're manipulating the collision shape up towards the top of the body. But there's also something that you run into when you're just crouching on the ground if you're raising the collision shape up, which is that sometimes gravity will act slower than the crouch speed. And while physically that's accurate, you can only crouch as fast as you can fall. In reality, I think that's an accurate thing to say. I don't know. In the game world, that's not necessarily true. You can have different kinds of gravities. You can have like a really, like what if you were making like a Halo game or Halo style movement, that jump is really lofty and slow. And if you had a fast crouch, then it literally wouldn't even keep up. So, you can't really see it here. I can tell because the screen shakes. So if I jump, the second time around it doesn't happen, but I can tell, probably because I made it, that the crouch is not fast enough. And so we're gonna try to adjust that problem because this is in the pro version. I haven't got to actually making this update yet. So we're gonna try to cover both. I'll show you that more in detail when we get to it. Let's get started. Okay, so we're jumping into our project. We are coming off the shotgun tutorial. And so you'll notice that we've got the new melee hitbox. And the first thing that we want to do is add an animation player. We will need an animation player, and we will create an animation. And we'll just call this crouch for now. And I think I'll make it like 0.1. Oh, pad's not on. 0.2 seconds. Maybe even 0.1. We'll make it quite quick so I can demonstrate those points I was telling you before. And in the game world, I'm just going to go to the side so I can see a bit better what we're planning to do. The first thing we're going to key is this collision shape. I'm actually going to rename this at this point so I know what I'm operating on. Body collision. And I might even rename this animation player. I'll just call it character animation player. Main reason for that is because in the main camera under the weapons models, we've got another animation player which doesn't have a name, and I don't want to get confused. You don't have to do that though. Okay, so we have our starting state. So in the crouch, we're going to need to key that in. We've got the capsule here. Yours might be a different size to mine, but mine is 0.5 radius. It is a totally normal 1.7 meters tall, and it is positioned 0.85 meters from the ground, which is just the center point. So we're going to key all those things in here. And I actually don't think we need that one. So we'll just take those two. And what we want to do is just reduce the height, obviously. So we can reduce it down to 1, because that's what I'm going for. I want to, at least in my game. So I guess it's worth talking about the design aspect of this. The idea of crouch, obviously the air crouch, you want to be able to jump up onto things, but like the crouch in and of itself needs to be able to fit inside of holes. So you need to be cognizant of the fact that the height that you choose makes sense. So for us, 1 meter is the hole that I want to be able to fit in, which actually means I need to make my character actually a little bit smaller, because otherwise you won't fit through, because you know, game engines are pretty accurate like that. So you'll notice that obviously it's shrunk down a little bit here, and we need to change the position. Oh, I actually stuffed up, so I'm gonna come back in here. This was supposed to be 0.5, what changed there? I don't know. So I'm gonna make that 0.9 again, now that I've updated the position on the animation player. And so we took off 0.8, so we need to add half of that 0.4 to this, and we'll be where we should be in the world. And I'll key that, and I'll key this. And you'll notice if you play it back, my snap is set to 0.1. I'll change it to 0.1 so we can watch it. There you go. So there's no upward movement. We don't need to change the position of the camera, which is exactly what we're going for, because we don't want the player to see or feel that crouch when they're jumping in the air. It's also like kind of disorientating. So, you know, this is better to do it this way. Okay, so we've got a crouch animation, which is great. And I'll also, while I'm here, create a crouch reset. You could always play the animation backwards, but for our purposes, actually we want a crouch reset. And this is actually pretty easy, so we've got all this stuff keyed in already, so I'll just key this one, create, and I'll key this one, create. I don't know if I'm gonna have to redo it, it's so annoying. So this was 0.8, and this was plus 0.4, excuse me guys. Let's key that in, let's key that in. Okay, so we've got a little ball. We'll start with those two at the very least, and we'll get to work on creating the code. We're gonna add a lot more to this. Like I said, it can be as complicated as you want it to be. Okay, so we're going to need to declare the animation player that we just created. So I'll come up to the top here. I'm actually gonna set this up as an export variable, animation underscore player, and I'll set that to be an animation player. And if I click on the player now, the player character, I'll be able to click that and just choose character animation. See what I mean when I said it's possible to get confused here. So click that one here, make sure it's the character animation. And we'll also need to create a variable here called crouched. And that'll be a boolean, and we'll set it to false to start. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is make sure that we've got inputs set up. I'm not sure if I've done anything for that yet, so we'll add a new action, crouch, enter that in, and hit that plus key. You can press just the key on your mouse, physical key code, control. For me, you can make it C. I don't like C personally, but you know, do whatever you like. Okay, so now we can come down to the input and we actually can create our little event. I'll do it at the bottom here. I'll just make some space and I can say if event rather dot is action pressed crouched, and we'll call a function called crouch. It doesn't take any variables. So I'll create that function now. So what we want to do is just check if crouched. And obviously if we're crouched, we want to exit the crouch. We're doing things a little bit back to front. So we'll just call here animation player dot play. And this actually won't come up. Normally if you're declaring the animation, you'll be able to see it there, but because we're declaring it in such a way, you won't see it. So just make sure that you type this out correctly. Crouch underscore reset. Then you can type else animation player dot play crouch, I think. I keep putting an N in crouch for some reason. Okay, so crouch is crouch. And then at the very bottom of this, we want to just say crouched equals the opposite of crouch. And so it'll just flip every time you press it and it'll do the opposite of what you expect it to do. That is all we need for now, just to get us started. Let's jump in and make sure it's working. And you can see, it did not play backwards. Oh, I understand why. It's kind of toggled at the moment. What I forgot was if event dot is action pressed, dot is action released, crouch, and then we can call crouch. A fun thing we can do here is we can actually create a toggle option if we want to make it toggleable, which would be good for your players. Like you see that as an option offered quite often. So what we can do is just come up to this and we can create an export variable crouch toggle. This is a bool and it will be false by default, so I don't actually like toggle. And that will just show up here and you can tick that, and you can also, when it's released, say if crouch toggle, then actually I should say if not crouch toggle, then crouch. So now crouch toggle is on. I'll need to press it every time to flip the variable. So that, or if you untick, whoops, slide on ceiling, if you untick crouch toggle, then now if I press it and I release it, I'm instantly freed. And so we've already sort of got the effect going at this point. I'm pretty sure I can't jump over this. And so now if I crouch as I jump, we're good. And we don't have anything to crouch under. Maybe we can create that. I'll just jump into the world, grab the grid map, and I'll just choose the dirt blocks. I'll just make a little opening here. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, we've got a little archway there, so we can play around with this. We should be able to crawl through this, which is great. You'll notice that obviously we're still zooming at crouch height, so we'll address that in a second. But we are flying through, and there's another thing we need to look at, which is the fact that we can exit the crouch and just pump our way up into that. So there's a couple of things we need to polish up here, but we're sort of well on our way. Let's come back over to the script. Where should we start, actually? You might have noticed it, but the crouch that we're doing is very much happening faster than when we come back. So this is what I was talking about with gravity. It's quite slow, and then the other one's very pronounced. All right, so what I think we should do, and I'm going to suggest kind of a novel solution here. We're going to create another animation. We're going to call it crouch underscore ground. And I'll also make this 0.1. And we're going to create a separate animation for when we're on the ground. So there's going to be crouch, right? I'm going to rename this to crouch air. And we're going to have crouch ground. And now we're going to come back and just key things up. We're just going to do it a little bit differently. Make sure we're working on the right collision shape. Let's key this in. All right, so once again, we're going to remove 0.8, so this is 0.9. Instead of adding 0.4, we subtract it. And so now we're perfectly on the ground. So what we're going to do now is move the camera down. And we know how much we've moved it because we've been keeping track. Don't forget, again, to key those starting frames. And this ending frame, we're going to take out 0.8. Okay, and it should be in the exact same position that it was. And if you watch this, I'll change my snap. And you'll see that it doesn't deviate from that. So now you've got a crouch on the ground that you can do where it goes up and down like that. But you obviously don't want to be calling this in the air because you wouldn't actually be able to clear any extra height because you're not giving yourself the ground leeway, you're just reducing your height. So this is fine if you wanted something where you didn't have to crouch jump, but we got to be cool. Okay, so now the question is really at this point is how do we achieve keeping track of the two animations? So I've experimented with a couple of different things. Obviously you can just like keep it a variable and store it as a string, what the name of the last animation you played, and then just reverse it. That works, but it's kind of messy. And it's more code, more things to check. And I don't like writing code, you know, I just want to keep things simple. Although you wouldn't think that based off my first person tutorial, would you? So what I'm going to suggest is actually using an animation tree and blending between these three states so that we can just go between 1 and -1 for each one. So I'm going to add an animation tree. We need to give it an anim player, and we're going to select the character animation player. we need to add a root. Now the root for this is going to be a blend tree here. So you come to tree root, you select blend tree. And all we need to add is a blend 3. And we're going to name this crouch blend. And we're going to add the animations. So I'm going to add 3 animations here. Okay, so one will be crouch ground, one will be crouch reset, one will be crouch air, and we'll drag each one into the blend, like so, and then we'll drag that to the output. And it's set to 0, so that's the normal state here. I'm going to name these as well. So I'll just call it ground, reset, that's confusing, crouch reset I guess. Call it normal or something, it's really up to you. I don't think we're going to affect these, but I like to keep them named anyway. And so now you can see with this blend, we can actually move in between them and beyond for some reason. Why is that allowed? Oh shit, it was 0.45. That was weird. Okay, so turns out we can blend between more than 0 and 1, beyond 1 and -1. I didn't know that till just now, but we're just going to stick between the regular 1 and -1. So now that we've got this, we've got crouch blend, we can actually query this via code. So we're going to need to make a couple of changes to what we just did. I'm sorry, I did a trick on you. So we'll just change this to animation mixer instead of animation player, because that's what we're going to need now. Something to keep in mind, if you are not mixer, this is a tree, excuse me. Let's change this back. Something to keep in mind, if you are using an animation tree, you really shouldn't be using the animation player to call on animation. So once we bring this in, it's off the table. We have to be using it to process our animations. So obviously this is very upset. Animation tree. Actually, let's just delete this shit because we don't need it anymore. Just write in pass and pass. Okay. So we're back here. What do we want to do? Well, we need to keep track of our different states. What we need is the blend amount. So obviously if we're crouched, we want to return to the center, which is blend equals 0. And then else, we need to do one of two things, right? So we want to know if is on floor. So if we're on the floor, we want to do the ground crouch. And looking down at the animation mixer, we know that we've set that as ground here, and it's in negative blend. So blend needs to get changed to -1. And then we can just type else, blend equals 1, because if we're not on the floor, then we're in the air and we want to do the, we want to do the air crouch, which is +1 blend. Okay, great, we've done it, but now how do we actually affect this variable within the code? And it's something that I've always struggled a little bit with, but it's gotten a little bit easier in Godot 4, I think. So we can come down here, we've got a field now called parameters. So we can query these fields, and now you can see there's a crouch blend parameter, and then there's a blend amount. So it's accessible here from the resource. And so you can actually right click that, copy property path. And that's great, but we need a way to smoothly move that number between them. And it's going to be done, in this case, with my favorite thing, as you guys know, which is a tween. So I'm going to create a blend tween here, bar blend tween, and I'm going to just go get tree dot create tween, and then we'll just say blend tween dot tween property. And the property is going to be on the animation tree. And the parameter over there, the path, is going to be what we just copied. Parameters / crouch blend / blend amount. And the amount, you guessed it, is going to be blend. And then it only wants to know our duration, which is going to be 0.2, which is the same as that. However, I'll show you in a second, we don't actually need to have an animation duration for any of these anymore. So one of the interesting things about doing it this way is that we no longer really want a duration for our animations. So you can just sort of delete the starting and bring the end of the animation to 0 and make the duration 0.01 or something very short. Or you could even just make it 0. It can't be 0, but you know, crouch ground, crouch air, same exact thing. Something I'm also going to do, just in case, because I'm feeling a little bit paranoid right now, is just key the position of the camera on all of them. Crouch reset, because that isn't there either for this, so it's a pretty big mistake actually. But yeah, make sure that camera is keyed in and make it 0. Okay, run this again so you can see everything's looking very smooth now. So when you press the control button, we're not falling, we're going to meet the ground when we're walking on the ground, but when we jump, the camera doesn't move when we hit the ground, we're still crouching, and when we release control, most importantly, we come up like normal. Okay, there's still a couple of things we need to address. Obviously, we can clip and get stuck in things, which we don't want. We are going way too fast. And one thing I don't like, you can jump when you're crouched, which, you know, like, is a thing, I guess. I don't like it, because then I can release this and we can get like a bit weird with it. So I'm gonna remove that ability as well. That's an optional thing. You don't have to follow that if you don't want. I might leave it till last. Let's work on the collisions for when you're inside a tunnel and you release control. So the first thing we need to add is a Shapecast 3D. I've got one down here, I'll type it in. Shapecast 3D. And this one, we're just gonna make a shape. It'll be a sphere shape, that's fine. 0.5 is perfectly fine. We don't want to go that way. We want to go that way. No, I'm an idiot. We want to go in the positive Y direction. Now, this cannot be on the ground, otherwise it will collide with the ground all the time. So you want to probably put this at the same height as your body collision, otherwise it gets a bit hard to keep track of the heights. So it's 0.85, so we'll make that 0.85, which is the center of our character. Our radius is 0.45. We want this to actually sit within the player at the moment. So for me, I've calculated it to be 0.4, not 0.45, and it'll sit there. So what you want to do, you can either do this by eye, or you can just crack out a calculator and all that kind of stuff to find out what the number should be. Either way, just make sure that it's close to that, so that it's easy to do the animations later on. So this is where we want to start, and we'll come over to the animation player, and this is for crouch reset. We'll come to the shapecast, we'll key the radius, key that in, we will key the target position, and we'll key the transform. So when we go to crouch air, what we need to do is actually move the shapecast up by the same amount. So what we've done here is we've come up by 0.45. Sorry, not 0.45, 0.4. And so that we're in the exact same position. We also need to increase the cast distance. Since we're in the exact same spot, we know that the cast distance just needs to be the radius. We just need to increase it by that. So 0.45. We're still not there, so 0.9 is actually where we want to be. And so this is exactly how we want it to look. When we're crouched down here, we want that collision to be happening above us. So we'll key this target position in, We'll key the size of the radius just in case that changes. We'll key all of these. And we'll come back to reset and we'll go to crouch ground. Now this is pretty much exactly where we want it, so we'll just key everything in still. Position doesn't need to change. This needs to come up, I guess, to 0.5. Yeah, that looks right. Create a position there, create a position there. Okay, so that's looking good. Now we can come into the code and we'll create another export variable for crouch collision. This will be a shapecast 3D, and just press save there. We'll come in and we'll make sure we assign that shapecast 3D, and then okay, so now that we've got the crouch collision, what we can do is we can also create a crouch blocked variable. This will be a bool and we'll set it equal to false. And we'll come back down to our project here and we'll say if crouch collision dot is colliding, and I'll actually change this to a negative, so if not crouch collision is colliding, then we'll do all our crouch stuff. Else, we will set crouch blocked to true. And so now we will be able to enter into crouch and we'll be able to exit crouch, but if the object is colliding, we won't be able to exit the crouch animation. And I'll just drag the camera back and I'll set debug collision, visible collision shapes. And so this will give us the ability to see all the collision shapes. Turning is going to look a little bit strange because we turn on the camera node, so things will look a little bit off. You'll just have to bear with it. And you can see as we crouch, that collision, that shape collider just turn up. And as we come in here, okay, great, we can't exit. It's colliding, and as we come back out, obviously we're still crouched. And now everything's inverted, so when I press the crouch button, I come up, and when I release it, I go back down. So obviously we don't want that to be that way, and we need to add a check, and then come over into the script again. Okay, so in the process function, we want to check if we're crouched and crouch blocked. We can say if not crouch detection, crouch collision, I should say, dot is colliding. We're going to set crouch blocked to the false. And we're also going to check on the next line that if input dot is action pressed, crouch, and not crouch toggle, crouch. And so what this will do, this extra line here, call the function here. Okay, so let me try to explain it. If we go into a covered space when we're crouched and we release the crouch button, this set of code is activated because crouch block is true. But if we press the crouch button while we're there, and if we don't do that, when we exit, no matter what we're doing, if we're pressing crouched, we're gonna pop up. So we want to make sure that when we're exiting, when we're trying to check for this exit, we actually are pressing, or not pressing I should say, the crouch button. And if crouch is toggled, then just don't even run. So if we come back, come in here, and we'll come down, you can see it's colliding. I can release the control key. Obviously you guys can't see, so I don't film my keyboard or nothing. When I walk out, everything's fine and dandy, we're good. But if I come down in here and release the control, I'll press it again, rip. That did the exact opposite of what I wanted it to do. I see over here, I've let it auto-complete this. I just need to change that to is action pressed, and we should be good. Gotta pay attention to those auto-completes. We'll come back down here, Okay, so I'm releasing the crouch button and I'm gonna come back out and we're all good. Awesome, so now it should be working as expected. We come into our little cubby house here and I've released the control button, and when I walk out, it comes up. But if I press the control again, I'm still crouched. Awesome, and we'll test also from an air jump as well to make sure that that's all working, and it looks like it is. So we're getting pretty close now. Things are working pretty much as I would expect them to. I'll reset the position of this camera node here. Zip. Okay, and we'll turn off all visible collision shapes. We don't need those anymore. Okay, so let's address the speed. What we can do is we can have another export variable here, and actually it's going to be an export range, and we're going to make it probably 0 to 3. It can really be as high as you want, but anything more than half is kind of like a lot. Or you could make it as high as speed. You could make it 0 to speed if you want as a constant. It's really up to you, but I'm gonna make it 3 because I feel like that's as high as you're ever gonna want it to go. And I'm gonna call this variable crouch speed reduction. And I'm gonna actually set it to 2. So it'll be half speed. I'm gonna create a new variable for speed. We're gonna keep the constant for now. And I'm gonna create a variable called underscore speed lowercase. I'm going to set it equal to speed. It'll be exactly the same, and we're going to manipulate our constant a little bit. Well, we're not going to manipulate, we're going to use it in the calculation for speed. So we'll come right back onto the is on floor bit here. I'm putting it here very specifically because I'm going to show you guys something and then I'm going to change it again. So I'm going to go speed here. So we go underscore speed equals the constant speed. And we'll divide that by, and we'll use max here. We'll use the float constructor, and we'll pass in our crouched variable. Now, what this will do is when we're crouched, it will return 1, and when we're not crouched, it will return 0, and that will, and we'll multiply that by our crouch speed reduction. So if we're not crouched, it'll just be 0. And then obviously the other integer we want to use is 1, so that if we're not crouched, not returning 0, we're returning 1, and we're dividing the constant speed by 1, not 0, otherwise your game won't work. And if I run this here, you'll see that when I crouch, we come down to 2.5 speed, rather than 5. Now let's apply this to our model. I'll delete this. And so you can see here, this is like your straightforward movement code. It's straight out of the default script. And rather than passing in speed here, we're going to just pass in speed. I'll leave the move towards like the delta the same. I don't think that really matters much. And so now, when we press control, we'll slow down dramatically, which is exactly what we want. Okay, so that's great, but one thing I didn't show you, but I will show you now, is that when we jump, we're instantly slowed down, which is a pretty undesired effect. So what I'm going to do is actually just come up here and say speed if not on the floor. So this is the code that adds the gravity. It only adds gravity when you're not on the floor. So we can go speed equals speed, the constant, and then right under this we can add an else statement and tab that in. And so that's why I had that there. And so now when you jump, you won't slow down until you hit the ground, which is exactly what we want. Okay, feels pretty good now. There's a couple of other things I think we could do. This blend here, this is just a 0.2. We can make an export range again. Whoops. Export underscore range, somewhere between 0 and 0.5. That would be really slow though. So we'll make that var crouch blend speed. And I'll set that to 0.2 like it is. And I'll come down here and I'll just replace this with crouch blend speed. Great. And then we've got this, and we can, you can make it super long now, and that will affect how quickly we crouch. I'll just run this here, and you can see now we're coming up and down really very slowly. I don't know why you'd want it to be that fast, but I'll bring this back down to something more like 0.2, which I think is reasonable. Okay, is there anything else? Oh, the jump. So there's one other thing we want to address, and that is our ability to jump while we're crouched. This is optional. I almost forgot it, but it's something that I don't like. You can sort of see here, I'm crouched and I'm jumping. It looks weird, man. It looks like leapfrog or something like that. So how can we do that? What I like to do is just, if you press the jump button when you're crouched, it just takes you out of the crouch pose. So I think that's probably the best way to do it. It's pretty easy as well, so what we can do is we can come down to the physics process where the jump happens, handle jump here, and right below this, we're just going to add an additional check. We can say if crouched. We're just going to call crouch. And then else we will jump. Okay, and that's pretty straightforward. So now if we're in a crouch state and we press the jump key, it's just going to release us from the jump. Let's just turn off the toggle here, and I think there's one other problem we need to address with this, which is the release. So if you don't have toggle, so if crouch is not toggled and you're crouched, you press jump, your character jumps up, but you're still holding the control key. What happens when you release it? You go back into crouch. So the easiest way to address that here is we're checking if not crouch toggle for the action release. So we're telling ourselves the button's been released, we're not on a toggle mode for crouch, we need to uncrouch, but we're not crouched. So we're just gonna say and crouched. And that'll just, excuse me, and crouched. And that'll just address that problem. And that pretty much ties it up. So now nothing happens. And we can just keep on crouching. Great. And we can do a crouch jump, which is iconic. You have to have it in your game. There you go. I don't think I can, oh yes, I can get up onto this one. It's higher, yeah, I probably shouldn't be able to, but I can. We'll address jump in a couple of episodes' time. Alrighty guys, that is all there is to it. We've got a crouch and we've got a pretty nice jump crouch going on here. I don't know, I've been looking around and I haven't seen any other jump crouch for Godot, so maybe this is the first one, at least for Godot 4. I don't know, I think it's like something you definitely need to put in a game. I just can't see myself making a first person shooter game without the jump crouch, you know? So that is how you do it. Obviously, if you found this video helpful, please remember to like and subscribe. And if you're feeling extra generous, you can always join me with the YouTube membership. I'm posting videos in advance. I was a little bit lazy over the Christmas break and I got a little bit behind, but I'm catching up now and I'm posting videos. I've been doing them a little bit differently. Obviously, they're a little bit longer than they used to be. I record live now, so if instead of like doing all the video and then editing that down, I'm doing like a live recording and, you know, I just talk more. That's all there is to it. And it's just a little bit easier to put together, so it'll allow me to create more content quickly, and then I'll focus on putting out one heavily edited video per month, and we'll see how that goes for a while. But yeah, if you want to join with the YouTube membership, I'm hoping to post videos in advance so you get them early. You'll also get access to the FPS Pro template, which includes fully rigged character, IK, juice, lots of juice, screen shake, So if you want to join, you can get that for free. Otherwise, you can buy it for $5. Links in the description. Anyway, guys, that's it. I'll see you guys next week, and we'll be doing lean.
Shoot me too! I don't want the aliens to get me!